And the points will be like this: 1.5 points for a win and 1 point for an Armageddon loss. And the players now speeding up. They're playing into an anti-Berlin. It's a repeat of the line that they just played.
Yep, we're off and totally repeating exactly the variation that we saw earlier in their classical encounter. And Fabi, he's switching up the move order maybe. Gukesh, the first to think. He doesn't have too much time. He needs to react very quickly here. Some threats potentially against White's Black's e-pawn, sorry, in the next few moves. So Black has to first decide which side he wants to castle on. The Black Knight goes back. And okay, he drops back his bishop. Fabi armed. He had this with Black actually yesterday against both colors.
Well, now there's a question. Is bishop b4 will be the move? Or just, rook b8, queen c8. Queen c8 is on the board.
Yeah, this knight looks offside, misplaced, but it is tying down Black's queen to this b7 pawn, and the b7 pawn cannot move because the c6 pawn would drop. So b3, really slow playing it here from Fabi. That's one strategy in Armageddon chess: just keep pieces on the board, make sure there are no pawn trades, and try to flag the opponent later.
Yeah, and you put pressure on the opponent, you try to make him think, to decide some things, but it's very slow. Very slow.
It is a very effective strategy when in the Armageddon games where White has 5 minutes and Black has 4, especially online chess. But anyway, Gukesh stepping forward with the c-pawn.
This is what White wants when he goes to knight c5, because b6 was not possible because of knight c6. So Black pushed c5. So in the next move, he wants to push away the knight, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is really bad news for the Black bishop on e7, which is kind of entrapped now behind its own pawns. But at the same time, Black rock solid. No pawn breaks for White in sight yet. And big first decision for Fabi. Is he really thinking about jumping into c6? It looks like the automatic move is to retreat.
That's a suicide of the knight.
Yeah, you've got to keep your knight protected. And he did so. Now he's moving the other direction. He's kind of done the odd switcheroo, pushed Black on the queen side and suddenly switched the attention to the king side. Knight f5 in the air. Also some pawn breaks for the first time with f4 later on.
It's so interesting that how is it possible? I mean, I was always having difficulties to understand that. Look, the pawn on c5, for some reason, it limits much more Black's opportunities to play these positions than if the pawn would be on c6, right? So White even lost 2 tempes in order to force Black to play c5. This I found always very interesting in this system.
Yeah, and I've always loved this pawn chain as White. It's the V, just kind of protecting in both directions from c2 to e4 and c2 to a4. But of course, that means you're solid. But yeah, no breaks on that side. The queen side essentially closed for the next few moves. Fabi needs to go for the Black king. There we go, queen f3.
Well, Black made space for one of his pieces for f8. I don't know if knight f8 will come. Most likely the bishop will be.
Oh, knight b8. The knight retreating to its starting square, getting ready to jump to c6 and d4.
Yep, a great route for that Black Knight into the center. Gukesh looking up there to check how many moves they've made. This seems to be a habit, just maybe a nervous nervous reaction from the players. He's only moved 16. He's not getting any increment anytime soon. But yeah, nice undeveloping move, retreating move there. Got to go back to come forward.
Taking advantage of the fact that he had to play c5, right? So now there is a place for the knight on c6 and going into d4.
Yeah, and White now breaking out with f4, trying to open some lines, and Black's knight jumping in. Big threat on the board, which is reacted with rook f2. Fabi blocks everything there.
And just quickly, our reporter Sverre caught up with Fabiano right before this Armageddon game. So let's have a quick listen to what Fabiano had to say.
This half point is looking to become pretty important for the tournament situation. Any special plans for how you're going to attack this game?
Well, I guess we'll see in a few minutes. I don't know. It's Armageddon. It should be exciting. I haven't played one since against Anish. It's been a while that I haven't played an Armageddon, so hopefully it'll be fun.
These Armageddons, do you feel like it's a coin flip, or do you feel like the better player most often goes out victorious?
I think the better player usually wins, but it's also a coin flip because many of the players here are pretty evenly matched.
Thank you.
And there we had Fabiano promising us excitement, and indeed it is super exciting now as Fabiano has taken control of the center.
Yeah, and temporarily White is a pawn up. We saw a question mark appear briefly on the board when Black put the king in the corner. And okay, recapturing.
Bishop h6.
Whoa, Judith. tactically sharp. White's queen cannot move because this knight is hit by the black bishop, and you want to play bishop h6. Threatening checkmate. Oh, he doesn't go for that. Instead, knight f5. Still going for checkmate, trying to force the knights off the board. Ooh, should we investigate that?
Well,
Bishop to h6 last move.
Bishop f6 on the board.
Well, this is also very tempting for white. That's clear.
You could still do bishop h6.
It's not the same.
It certainly isn't.
I think after bishop h6, so you can take, and after knight takes rook f8, because the e5 pawn is protected, right?
Yeah, black can defend everything just in time. He's looking at tactics like this. I would be very inclined to play a move like bishop g5 just to kind of eliminate this black defender. The black bishop's a bit sad, but it holds everything together for now. Okay, Fabi, he's paused, really slowed down, sensing an opportunity. The top players, they sense these critical moments.
You'll move on the board. The bishops are going to get traded. Big threat against the g7 pawn. That's why Gukesh stepped forward with the queen. But Fabi has an easy position to play. It's just simply to line up on the f line and see what happens with those rooks.
Seems a very promising position for white.
So much tension now on the f-file. He's going to be looking for tactical blows. Black's isolated e-pawn is a big factor in the position right now. Some ways to attack that.
Yeah.
What to go for now? It looks like everything's perfectly set up.
Knight e7 also sometimes can be very tempting.
I was looking at that, but then I also got tempted just by the calm move as well. You can just drop your knight back and then jump in with the knight to d5. But okay, we have a safety first move from Caruana, getting his king out of any potential trouble.
Yeah, it feels a bit slow, however, and if Gukesh can survive eventually in the endgame, he'll have good chances. It feels like white needs to deliver a knockout while queens and rooks remain on the board. Don't forget that white also has a weak a-pawn later in the game. First, what to do with this white queen?
I really like the move knight e6. It's a good defender. And if after queen g3, black would be going knight f4, blocking the rooks on the f-file.
Yeah, knight f4. Beautiful post for the knight, as long as white cannot evict it with a pawn. So maybe another square with the white queen. No, he does drop back to g3. Your move's on the board there, Judith. The black knight is holding things together for Gukesh. He's really sped up, you've got to say. And queen g4 now getting ready again. g3, kick this knight out.
What about g6?
Mirroring the same idea. g6, kicking the white knight out first.
But black still has problems with the e5 pawn, so any endgame will also be very double-edged on account of that. And instead, Gukesh also preparing to line up his rooks or potentially use his rook to attack the white queen.
Yeah, Fabi has to kick that black knight now. That's the whole point of his play. Gukesh, I've got to say, defending really well. He had a difficult position. It looked like everything was falling apart, but suddenly...
It's very difficult to play it with the black side, I believe.
He's doing a good job, though. 3 minute 40 against just under 5 minutes for Fabi. Knight to e3 retreating. This is your point, Jovanka. If the queen trade happens on white's terms, then the white knight repeats and kind of replaces this white queen on g4, and the black e5 pawn would be doomed. So queen takes queen off the table.
And the idea for white, if there is no exchange, then probably g3 can be the move and knight plays to d5. But now the e3 knight is attacked, counter-attacked by Gukesh.
Preventing white from jumping in with the knight to d5 because of tactical reasons. It's interesting. White was a step forward and defend that knight.
I believe that maybe white will decide to go back, because if rook f3, for example, then the rook on f6 on the 6th rank, it can be chasing the queen. In that case, rook g6, rook h6, rook f6, pushing the white queen back.
And of course, Fabiano is in a must-win situation. A draw is completely insufficient.
Yeah, he needs to just repeat, just go back. Fabi's really slowed down. His 3-minute time advantage at the start of this Armageddon has dwindled down to 1 minute, less than a minute now. And okay, second time we've seen this position, and he changes it up. Does play g3 as predicted, Judith. Now the black knight has to make a decision. Going back as well. And white's knight, the superior of the two, but still no breakthrough. Still lacking a direct plan.
Well, black improved his position significantly. I think g3 is something that maybe white was not so comfortable having that pawn.
You don't have tactics possibilities, like for instance, knight takes pawn
On G7.
on G7. It's not quite working out, is it?
Rook G6 maybe is always on the cards here. Black's rook sliding across. Oh, okay. He hesitates, Fabi there, but does step back with his knight, offering a rook trade. To take or not to take, Judith?
To take.
Take. Get those rooks off the board as quickly as possible.
I think to take is better, because otherwise, if rook moves away, queen h5 and the e5 pawn is in danger.
Yeah, Gukesh just mulling over his options here. We're expecting him to try and take as many rooks off the board as possible. Long term, black is okay. Just short term needs to survive this wave.
Or the other idea is to play doubling the rook on f8 and then getting ready to have an f6 pawn. But I'm not sure. It looks like it can be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I agree in the feature chat. Fabi has been burning a lot of time, but suddenly Gukesh on this one move has slowed down 40 seconds and counting.
Because it's a critical moment how to exchange the rooks, in what circumstances.
Yeah, and on whose terms? You're right. What's he going to do? He does go for that latter option. You mentioned all the rooks disappearing from the board, but black has a very weak backward F pawn now. Can Fabi attack that one? He's in the move. He's got the time to strike with the initiative. Oh, feels like it's on the edge for black here.
Well, knight on e6 stands extremely well, defending the c7 pawn, and black wants to defend f6, playing queen f7 and king g7. But Fabiano, of course, he does it very, very with silent moves.
The silent assassin, Fabiano Caruana. Silent but deadly here. Queen f7. Yeah, and I like how he's just taken away some squares from the black knight. Now the white knight is likely to come in sooner or later.
Yeah. But I feel that Gukesh has been very crafty with his last move. He's gotten out of the pin and getting ready to jump forward with his own knight into the center.
Yeah.
But in time, so far, he's doing a pretty good job managing his time. He's nearly 1 minute behind, but he's still handling it well.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, h5, is it a good move or it's too dangerous for black?
Kick away that white queen. Gains space, gains time, but maybe a weakness long term. Big decision and not an easy one to make in Armageddon chess. Fabi just moving his king. Is he going on a king walk all the way to the queen side, maybe?
Well, that's a good journey to start with.
And apparently a missed opportunity for Fabiano there, but still looks like white has the advantage, and it's a static advantage. It's going to endure for a long, long time here. Okay, queen trade. To trade or not to trade?
Not to trade, that's for sure.
And Fabi
White
goes away.
cannot trade the queens unless he's winning a pawn immediately.
Yeah, white's queen more active than its counterpart. Normally that's a good indicator of whether to take pieces off the board.
Well, now the question is, will knight d4 possible, but then queen c8, queen g7, c3, and white knight shows up on f5? That can be dangerous.
Yeah, it's too scary to allow the white pieces in, and wow, h5, giving the black knight more squares, but he wants to plant that pawn on the h6 square, trapping the black king.
This is the reason I was hesitating to play h5 with black.
Big, big questions now for Gukesh to answer, and only 1 minute to do so. He blocks the advance of white's h-pawn.
Huge weakness on g6. Now white wants to have replacement. Now made space for the knight on f5.
Yeah, that white knight is coming.
But knight g7 can be something to look for the h5 pawn, enough to check black goes queen e8.
Yeah, he has to do something. I think he has to allow the white queen in behind, but Gukesh is a scary decision to make, only 50 seconds.
Yeah. And he steps up with the king. He just has to hold this position if he wants to walk away with an Armageddon. And it's looking like Fabiano is in full control, both on the clock and on the board.
At the same time, Gukesh is not giving easily his skin. He's fighting.
Well, Fabi jumping forward with his knight. Is now the time for Gukesh to offer a knight trade?
That's a big question. To offer it, and from where? Onto knight d4 or to knight g7?
Need to get rid of that white knight by any means possible, and Judith says it. Yeah, 2 moves to do so. He's got to choose. He's got to just trust his instincts here under 30 seconds.
After
no time
knight
to calculate.
d4, I think knight d6 can be a dangerous continuation for white.
And a big shout out to Robert Hess. Hello. Fabi is playing this game extremely well.
Yeah, extremely calmly, just full control, never panicking, slowly improving his position. I totally agree. And knight g7 given a question mark by the computer, but why? It looks solid. It looks like he's forcing the knight trade. White's h5 pawn also vulnerable.
Gukesh under 20 seconds, but he will be getting that 1 second move increment, and Fabiano giving a few checks just to build up some time on the clock. And look at that, the c6 pawn has fallen.
Yeah, he's a pawn up now, and White does have the option of trading queens in a lot of positions to convert his advantage. This is going to be a tough endgame to
Only
hold.
16 seconds for Gukesh. It does not look good for him because the king march is going to be going all the way to f5 eventually.
But look at Fabiano, he just improves the position of his queen. And as David highlighted, that king march is very much on the board. Okay, Gukesh attacking the h5 pawn.
Yeah, and the king march, you predicted it, Judith. It's happening, and it transpires that actually black has no checks here. You just have to wait. Gukesh so passive. That's been the story of the game so far. Black just on the defensive. It's about whether Fabi can continue marching in later on. First, the white king is tied down to the defense of this h-pawn. You need to finesse it a bit. How to do so? Okay, sidesteps any checks. Very logical stuff. And he needs a breakthrough. Still no passed pawns for white. That's maybe the next step.
Yeah, and Gukesh just 4 seconds left on the clock.
And another question mark for this black move. It looks very natural. There's nothing good to be done here as black. How's Fabi going to finish this?
Probably a5 can be a strong move here because black cannot take on a5 to queen c5. And if white can push the pawn all the way to a6, that would lead to a complete win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's just biding his time, Fabi. He'll change the position. He'll go for this a-pawn push when he's 100% sure. But first, suddenly it's black attacking the a-pawn.
No, because there's a queen check on g6.
Yeah, black forced to sit and wait.
Is Fabi actually going to do a king walk on the other side of the board? Move it all the way to the A line and then prepare this a5 idea.
He's just got full control. This is a beautiful square for the white queen. The black queen can barely move. And he's just going to defend everything and infiltrate via the queen side with his king.
Practically, there is no way that Gukesh can escape with such a small time on his clock, 4 seconds. But look at a5 was played.
Oh, he's on in 3 seconds. He's playing as quickly as a human can play.
Something very close to the squares to each other.
He's trying to build a fortress, Gukesh, but suddenly counterplay. He's going active with the black queen. Fabi has to be really careful. The black queen cannot sneak behind now and deliver some checks. Fabi's winning all the pawns in the meantime.
What kind of drawing opportunity.
Yeah, if black gets one move and gives some checks, the white king might not escape.
How will white win?
He's repeating
5 seconds, 2 seconds,
Fabi's lost on time.
Ooh.
Oh, that was unexpected. It came from nowhere. But in the end, it was Gukesh who survived and managed to net those 1.5 points. And the chat just sums it up there. Oh my God.
Wow.
What a game.
Well, I think when we go down under 10 seconds with only 1 second bonus, this generous bonus time per move, I mean, at that point, if you just lose your focus and concentration for a second or two, then this is what can happen.
Yeah. And, well, I think this is a perfect time for us to catch our breaths and take a break. So see you all in a few minutes.